I think the problem is it's not one thing, right? We look at this, you go like, well, there is Q angle. They have a smaller ACL. They have a smaller intracondylar notch than males, greater joint laxity after puberty than males have. Menstrual cycle, there are different theories on that, obviously in different phases. When you look at the schedule that they're playing, it is significantly greater, and the load is more on athletes now than ever. And female athletes are a part of that. Female athletes are less likely overall to be training than males are, right? If you look at the statistics, you say less than 20% of female athletes are doing neuromuscular training in some sort. On average, when you look at high school, there was a 2023 study that came out and said, look, 50% of varsity athletes, males, are required to train. Currently, it's about 9% for female athletes across the country. So you see there's still a lag in training in addition to the load. So they're playing more, they're not training, add into the factors that they have physiologically. We continue to see this lag still in what's happening for female athletes, and to help them to actually not only reduce injury risk, but to maximize their performance.
Hey everybody, I'm your host, Anthony Renna. Welcome to episode 434 of the Strength Coach Podcast. We're talking about relevant topics with top coaches to help you become a better strength coach, trainer, therapist, or business owner. Brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. Guys, right now, 20% off PB Extreme Soft Toss Med Balls. My favorite medicine balls. I carry around a 4-pound ball with me at Lifetime. It's my own ball, just to make sure I always have one. We also talked about Perform Better's partnership with High Rocks and Center. They have new bundles that you can get and save a lot of money when you get those bundles. Also, save the dates. 3-day functional training summits are announced. No lineup yet, but those are coming soon. Chicago, June 18th to the 20th. Long Beach, July 9th to the 11th. Providence, August 20th to the 22nd. Guys, you can check it all out at performbetter.com. Today, I have on Coach Justin Kegley. He's a performance coach, author, speaker, and founder of Movement Fitness in Rockford, Illinois. He specializes in working with female athletes, and that's what we're going to talk about today. He just released Becoming the Unshakable Athlete. Actually, 2 versions of it, which is kind of cool. We're going to talk all about it, but a parent's version and an athlete's version. We're going to talk about why female athletes are still seeing a rise in ACL tears, why they're at higher risk, what we can do about it. Club sports and early specialization, why that's winning over development, why we've made outcomes more important than behaviors, his big rocks in training, what coaches can do to help build unshakable confidence in their athletes, and strategies for parents to navigate their kids' sports and more. We're going to talk all about the different versions of the book as well. Great interview with Coach Keg. Guys, don't forget, check out businessforunicorns.com. They have a ton of free resources, not just for gym owners, but all trainers. Next episode, actually, we have Mark Fisher on. We're going to do an interview with him. So, all right, we'll check out Coach Keg. All right, guys, I got on Justin Kegley. He's a performance coach, author, speaker, and founder of Movement Fitness in Rockford, Illinois. He specializes in training female athletes to maximize performance, reduce injury risk, and build unshakable confidence. I love that part of it. Over the past decade, he's helped more than 1,000 female athletes reach their peak performance, and he talks all about it he just released 2 books, really the same book, but for different people. It's for parents and for athletes, 2 different versions, which we'll talk about later. Becoming the Unshakable Athlete. Justin, thanks for doing this, bud.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I was telling you earlier, look, when I saw that you had, the book was coming up, I reached out and was like, oh, cool. Like, when's this, when can you get me a copy? And like, let's get you on the show, because I think this is an important topic to keep revisiting. I said, well, we've had Missy Macbeth on talking about training female volleyball players, and Lee Taft. And, he talks about, he gets crazy when we talk about the basketball, the travel teams, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Jeremy Frisch, Coach Boyle about talking about early specialization all the time. But we haven't talked about this in a while, and really the main focus will be on reducing risk for young females. And also another thing was for me is like, just, I'm a big hockey fan, and the ladies just won the gold. And by the way, female athletes at the Olympics were just dominant, right? American female athletes. We
Absolutely.
won't bring up Lindsay. Lindsay tore ACL, but I mean, she's going to, a billion miles an hour. She's a maniac, right? Because she lives on the edge. So that's a little different. That's not the ACL injuries for the most part that we're talking about. We're going to talk about. So, but what I do want you to start out with, Justin, is I really love the story. I don't normally do this where we talk about somebody's story, but I kind of want to get into, I want people to understand sometimes training or things can take you in a different direction than what you normally think you're going to be training. And I love the story of you, of Erin, and how you got into really training female athletes.
For sure. Well, here's the deal. We opened up Movement Fitness 10 years ago last October. And so I was super pumped because I wanted to help athletes perform at, high level, wanted to help guys. And for me, I was a football, basketball, baseball player. I was like, look, I'm going to train the bros. Like, it's going to be a bunch of dudes in here. We're just going to be grunting and sweating, and they're going to be getting after it. It's going to be great. And, we opened up the facility after a while. I had been training people at another place, and then we opened up our own building. And, what I found was it was August. And what I failed to realize was that football players are in camp. And so regardless of whether, I didn't have really a name in my area at that point. And so for football guys, and so they're all in camp. They're not coming. And so we had to figure something out. And I had some personal training clients, so I was working with that. But I really wanted to get into athletes more. And so I had a friend of mine that called me who's a physical therapist. He said, look, I have an athlete for you. And I was ecstatic. So super pumped. Here we go. Let's get it going. And he's like, all right, so she is a female athlete. She's 5'5". She's a goalkeeper. She is just coming off of an ACL tear. She's about 4.5 months post-op, and she has one goal, and that's to be a D1 soccer player. And I thought, okay, in that moment, I'm processing all these things. Like, I've never worked with a female athlete. I had never worked with a soccer player, and certainly never worked with anybody that had an ACL tear. So in my head, I'm thinking, why are you calling me? But he knew me. He knew my training. And so he's like, look, she's perfect for you. We've gone through therapy. She's at a point where she needs to start pursuing more and getting after training. And so I said, yes. So I went to his office because I wanted to pick his brain a little more on what we needed to do, but did an FMS there. So I was going through that process with her and then said yes. And so ultimately I brought Erin in. And the fortunate part for me is not having many clients at that point was I had tons of time to do research. So I was fortunate. Mike Boyle was obviously a big fan of Coach Boyle's, and he was somebody that influenced me. I did the CFSC and had gone through that, and so I knew that he had always talked about ACL prevention is really just good training, right? So how do we take what we know and apply that to her? And so, but watching someone that wasn't just struggling physically, like they're not strong enough or they're not. They struggle with some kind of coordination. Like, she was literally coming off of an ACL tear. And so working through the process, like, she could get stronger, and we continue to see that progress over time, but power lagged and speed lagged. And so to see this process build, like, we do single leg hurdle hops and she'd kick it and fall over and just be so frustrated. But she was also super competitive. So she also knew where she wanted to go. And so she knew what it would take. So we just kept working with her and building over time. And Erin kept seeing progress and, got back onto the field, a year later. Well, she was back before that, but really had success. Became the MVP of her conference, won some Gold Glove awards for her club team, and ended up going on and earned her D1 scholarship. She played at the University of Wisconsin, was an all-conference player for them, and now is playing professionally. And to see that progression, you go like, look, I thought I was going to be working with a bunch of dudes, and that changed quickly for me because I saw her. But what happened after Aaron was I got a call from another parent, said, "Hey, I heard you did this with Aaron. Can you do it with my daughter?" And we had about 3 or 4 of those afterwards. I'm like, well, I guess we just continue to do this. They saw success, got back on the court. 3 of them continued to go on to play college. And then we started building this niche. And then I started getting calls from parents that said, "Hey, my daughter hasn't torn her ACL. Can you help her not do that?" So yeah, we can certainly help. So we started to build this niche, and it's far from what I thought it would be when we opened up this building and this place, but it's ultimately become a large part of, over 70% of our athletes here are female. We continue to work with all kinds of athletes, but that's just been a specialty and a niche that we have developed and continued over the years. And to see that progress in those female athletes and the confidence they build has been something that really has changed my life in the direction, the course of my career.
Very cool. I mean, it's similar. The reason why I love the story too, I relate a little bit when I first got into training.
Yeah.
I knew I needed a little bit of a story. And although I'm a hockey guy, ideally I just would have been at a rink and had a facility at a rink and just, skated in between sessions or something. But I knew I didn't really have a lot of connections there. And I just got the golf cert for, just in case. And I knew I had a little bit of a story. And when I was at Equinox, that's what I just told the salespeople. Hey, I train golfers as well. And that kind of started to build. Eventually, I opened my own place, 5 Iron Fitness, where, I went deep into it with TPI, et cetera. I just wanted people to kind of get that story, because I think with you, you don't know. We got a lot of guys out there that are thinking, yeah, I originally got in this, I was a football player, or I was a, basketball player or whatever, and I want to train. That's the kind of athlete I want to train. But then, you find something that really touches you and it becomes your mission, which, for you,
sure.
It's become your mission. So very cool. Let's get into this. And this is, you and I were talking earlier and okay. So the female ACL tears keep rising. I told you, we've been doing this podcast. This is like year 19. We said female athletes 14, 18 are 4 to 6 times more likely to tear ACL than boys. 32,000 high school girls will tear their ACL this year. 1 in 100 girls, that's high school girls, will suffer an ACL this year. 1 in 10 in college. 70% are non-contact, where nobody touched them. So my question is, we've been talking about this. There's more places open. There's more young girls training now. We know there are, but I wonder if it's a little bit of the higher level now that we have pro sports now, women's pro soccer and basketball and hockey, that now there's, and between Title IX coming, really getting popular and getting more young ladies into sports, maybe the bar's raised. But what else is it telling us? We're going to get into training in a little bit, but what genetically, because I did hear some of it was myth. Oh, it's not the Q angle. It's not that they're on their cycle or whatever. I just genetically, why are they at higher risk? Like, what is the research telling us right now?
Well, looking at it, you go like, well, I think the problem is it's not one thing, right? We look at this, you go like, well, there is Q angle. They have a smaller ACL. They have a smaller intracondylar notch than males. They have greater joint laxity after puberty than males have. So menstrual cycle, there are different, theories on that, obviously in different phases. So I think the challenge is when you combine that with the fact that the schedule that they're playing, and I know we're going to talk probably about club sports and all that later, but when you look at the schedule that they're playing, it is significantly greater, and the load is more on athletes now than ever, and female athletes are a part of that. But what we know is female athletes are less likely overall to be training than males are, right? If you look at the statistics, you say less than 20% of female athletes are doing neuromuscular training in some sort. On average, when you look at high school, there was a 2023 study that came out and said, look, 50% of varsity athletes, males, are required to train. Currently, it's about 9% for female athletes across the country. So you see there's still a lag in training in addition to the load. So they're playing more, they're not training, and you add into the other facts, so the factors that they have physiologically. So we continue to see this lag still in what's happening for female athletes, and to help them to actually not only reduce injury risk, but to maximize their performance. There's one study that looked at this and said girls in puberty that are training, so early puberty, they can gain 13.4% better control of their lower extremities just by starting to train over the course of a year. But the girls that don't, they lose 21.7% of control over their lower extremities.
Wow.
So when you take a look at all of the factors that are going in, it's not one thing. So we can't just wave a magic wand and be like, hey, just go do this thing, right? The challenge is how do we look at all of this and go, look, I can't control their club sports schedule. I can't control what they're doing with their high school team or anything else. I know I can't control their physiology, but what I can, and everybody's different too, right? So just because, we have a different Q angle on this person, it looks different on somebody else. So the challenge is how do we take what we know and start to apply it? And that's a big part of why I wrote the books, because I know there have been people on your podcast, and I know that there are great coaches throughout the country that are continuing to try to help to reduce these injuries, help them to maximize performance and go on to achieve whatever their goals are. But we are still not getting this message out to the masses. And I wanted to go to parents and to female athletes specifically and go, look, these are the things that you need to know, because they did a study looking at college athletes and go, look, 33% of them were familiar with an ACL prevention program. I hate the word prevention, right? We talk about that. I know Coach Boyle talks about that, but whatever, that's what it is. So when you look at this, 45%, only 45% had actually received any kind of education on ACL injuries. So you have a large group that aren't doing anything. And again, less than 20%, approximately 15% in the study by Tanaka in 2020 that actually had training that would help them to reduce injury risk. So you take into account all of these factors and you go, look, it's not one thing, but we're not doing enough yet for female athletes to help them perform at a higher level.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess because I felt like we've been talking about this for a long time, and I know there's so many other things, like, for example, when you go to a gym, if you kind of believe in some of the Stuart McGill, the disc degeneration with crunches and type of, sit-ups, and you go to a gym and you're still seeing people with plates and doing like decline crunches or sit-ups or whatever. I know we do kind of live in a little bit of a bubble. If we watch a video at your facility or Coach Boyle's facility, we're going to see so many young girls at RYPT, at Bobby Smith's place. So many of the people that are on the show. We're seeing some great training, but obviously it's still not there. And that's where I was kind of just, wow. I mean, the boys, they're not training. They can't be training that much more. I was assuming the gap was closing, and I just felt like there's got to be something else there with these female athletes. But I'm just, also we have a lot more playing now, right? We have a lot more athletes with the influence of all of these great female athletes in the 90s and early 2000s. Look what happened. There's going to be even more now with the women's hockey right now, that the great story of the women's hockey team winning the gold.
For sure.
Right. In America anyway. So, and we're seeing it.
But I think your question goes back to my frustration and why we ultimately need to put out more information and write the book that goes directly to people, the parents and the athletes, because they continue to think, and I hate to keep getting into this early, but like the club sports scene, like they're playing more. And the goal is they keep pushing them into, you need more skill work. You need to spend more time practicing. We need to go to more showcases, ID camps, do all those things, because that's how you get seen. And you go, great, but what are you showcasing in those events? Because if you're not doing enough, like you're not going to maximize your performance anyway. So you're not going to show them what you can from a speed perspective and all that. And then when you look at all these great athletes, there are a lot of great athletes that are out there in the college world and now in professional, more so for female athletes. They're performing at a high level. They're getting great training. But I also have a lot of athletes that come back and you go, look, they're not getting training from some of the collegiate level. They're not getting the training that they need to continue to help them to reduce injury risk. So you see more and more injuries. I had one female athlete that came back from a low Division I mid-major. She'd come back. They had 6 ACLs in 1 year. Okay. How many single leg exercises did they do? 0.
Man.
In their season, right? So you're like, this is the frustrating part for me, because you go, I know there's a lot of great stuff. And shout out to, you said Bobby Smith at Ripped, but I love him, and Coach Boyle. But those guys, the problem is for every one of those, you go like, I have, in the summer, we have 130 to 150 people training in here. 70% of them are female athletes. That's great. That looks awesome. You go to Coach Boyle's. I know I've been there. You see that. Awesome. But for every one of those, I've got 25 to 30 of them that aren't training in here or a place like mine in our area. And that's the frustrating part, is we still haven't gotten there. And I know not all boys are training too. You go look at the percentages, 50% of them, but you go, they're spending more time in training by far than female athletes are.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right too. I agree 100%. I mean, I just was kind of feeling like, well, the boys are playing these club sports and travel. I play hockey. So like even this morning I went to, I had the ice to myself this morning, but I see a lot of young kids on, doing stick time and then the coaching hour. And then, I did stick time last week. So there's a bunch of us out there, but then right after it was coaching time, and it was all young kids. I'm like, go out and do the free play. You'll be so much better off. I'm still for coaching. Don't get me wrong.
Dude,
but
100%.
Yeah. And so one of the things too is I totally understand. I mean, Michael, what's his name? Oh man, Michael Lewis wrote a great book on this whole travel team, club sports thing. His daughter was a big, I think it was a softball player.
Sure.
And he talked about that whole process and the amount of money involved in it. And it's really, it's kind of crazy with the travel. I was talking to my dad about it because this is my 50th year playing hockey, and we're just kind of going over like, oh my God. And I showed on Facebook, I showed a couple pictures of, me when I was 9 and with the stick, and then, last year. And
yeah,
it was just like, wow. I told my father, I said, he's like, remember we used to have to drive over here and over there. And I said, that's nothing. Now, these kids are going to Chicago and DC and, Boston on a regular basis and St. Louis and Michigan. They have to go that far. So it's really crazy how many programs have really kind of gotten into this, or how many times. And Coach Boyle, like we talked about, he's been railing about this for so long. Now, do you know anything about the Minnesota hockey programs? Like they don't have travel teams. They all play high school hockey, and you see how successful that is. Can you touch on this idea about, club sports a little bit more and early specialization and why that's winning over development?
Oh, for sure. Well, number one, it's a business. Like you said, someone found a way to monetize it. And we make parents like, look, I'm in it. I've got 3 boys. So they're playing travel baseball, and we're trying to figure out like, how can we help them develop, but also not drive them crazy? Because what we know is 70% of kids are now quitting sports before the age of 14, right? So half of kids start playing when they're young. They build up. But right now, what we've done is the club sports scene has essentially eliminated rec sports, right? So there's nothing local. It's all travel. And, a lot of people end up going like, hey, we travel 2 hours to go play the same team from our hometown, right? So you get frustrated. You're like, dude, we could have just put together a league, right? Like out here. So I think that's the frustrating part, is it's become a business. And so the job of a business is to get more people to come through their doors and to help more people. And I know that there are lots of clubs doing lots of good things, and that's great. And they're helping people to get to the next level. I know lots of people doing really great work. But again, for every one of those, there's others that aren't. And so they're not giving them enough of what they need. And so this becomes about, outcomes rather than creating behaviors, right? So it's like, look, I want to win. So the goal is, we want to win the tournament, whatever. So the 11, 12, 13U tournament, you go like, who cares? At the end of the day, who really cares? Because it's not helping the athlete develop. It's helping the club to look better. And the problem is the kids aren't getting the development that they need. So I know, like, for my youngest son, just looking at this, like we just join a new team. And the coach is like, I don't care what our record is. I want to develop your kid because we want them to be here for a longer period of time. You go like, certainly that benefits them. But you go like, I don't care what their record is either. Having a gold medal on the wall from a weekend tournament at 13 means nothing if, he goes on to either hate the sport because we drove him into the ground and just made him play 5, 6, 7, 8 games in a weekend. It's the same thing for all of our athletes. You think of like, basketball and soccer and that are high output, high energy sports, and you're going and playing 4, 5, 6 games in a weekend, like at some point that's going to wear you down either physically or mentally. And the problem is it's happening in both. So we're wearing kids down by all these tournaments, and it's happening every single weekend. And then by the time that they're 14, 15, they're looking at this going like, do I want to keep doing this? Like my friends are going to homecoming and prom and they're going and hanging out on a Saturday night. And you go, look, if you're a high level athlete, there's stuff you're going to have to give up. But that's a choice that you make rather than being forced into a position of going like, I'm never doing anything with my friends. So the problem is we've made kids mini professionals, and that is just driving too many of them out of the sport early. And that's creating a huge problem long term.
I like that. We made them mini professionals. Like, yeah, like it's not the same. So a reminder, the book, you have a parent's version and an athlete's version. So I want to just use that as a segue with this idea about the club and the parents, because the parents feel a lot of pressure. But okay, maybe there's some parents listening out there that they feel a little pressured to kind of do this. The kids might even be pressuring them, like, I need to play it in this. Okay, great. You have a whole section on kind of like some really good guidelines for parents, for example, like talking about the sport in the car, or, some of the things to say to them. Can you just kind of go over some of those things that we can learn from to really make that journey a little bit more pleasant with the parent-child experience?
For sure. Well, if you think about it, I saw this not too long ago. It's like, look, if you went downstairs and you wanted to get your kids to stop playing video games, what would you do? You'd sit behind and be like, jump here, get this, do that, go here. And the kids would be like, dude, stop. Like, I can't take it anymore.
It's a good idea.
Go somewhere else.
Yeah, publish that.
So if you want to get your kids to stop playing video games, go break them down the same way you break them down after a game. And I think the problem is making them mini professionals. Ultimately, we're treating them like they're adults. And you go like, look, kids are going to mess up and they're going to make mistakes. And you know what? They're going to show up sometimes and they're not going to know why they're off, right? These are kids that are either pre-puberty, in puberty, or just coming out of it. You go like, dude, hormones are all over the place. They may not have good nutrition. They may not have good sleep. They may be on their phone late at night. Who knows? There's all kinds of reasons. But ultimately, we feel pressure as parents to go like, okay, well, Susie said she wanted to go play Division I soccer at the age of 12. So we're going to treat her like she is a Division I soccer recruit. And so then we start to break her down. So we're sitting in the stands and we're yelling out instructions. So do this, run faster, cut here, take the shot, pass the ball, all of that. And so we keep sending her messages. Meanwhile, the people that we pay on the other side of the court are trying to yell out instructions too. So your daughter's going, that's my mom or dad. That's my coach. Who am I supposed to listen to right now? So what do you think that does? That causes anxiety in them. So they're building up going like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now. So what are they going to do? A lot of them just shut down. So we're creating anxiety in our kids more so by doing that. And then when we get in the car and we break down the game, it becomes nothing more than they feel like they're in an interrogation. So we're sitting there and go like, hey, in the first quarter, you missed this shot. In the second quarter, you made this pass and you did this thing, all right? Or whatever it is, we continue to break down. So not only did they have to live it during the game, they walk out and they relive it in the car. So again, this goes back to the mental piece of going, you know what? Why would somebody quit sports at the age of 14 or something like that? Well, I not only physically am I, going to all these tournaments and doing all these things, but then I have to relive it. So I have to hear it from my parents, or then you're going to go back to practice and you're going to go back through that. You should get instruction and breakdown and criticism to try to figure that out and try to, hopefully in a positive way, build you back up. But we are continuing to break down our kids and causing more anxiety in them because we feel anxiety because we paid money for this. We paid for a hotel for this. I spent gas or airline money for this. So you better go out there and you better do it. So it's no longer about the love of the sport. It's about the outcome. And so that's where we have a big problem right now. And I know it's like there are going to be a lot of people that hear this from a performance guy and go like, look, what's the best thing you can say to your kid after a game? I love you. I love watching you compete, and I'm proud of you. And look, I say that to my kids, and I'm certainly not perfect. I learned this with my oldest son, and it was a lot of struggle. I felt that anxiety to go like, you said you wanted to play in college, so you need to do this, and you need to do that. And that was a big problem. And guess what? He's not playing in college. Ultimately, he's like, I got other things that I want to do. And he's going to be a firefighter. And that's great. And I'm super proud of him. I don't know if that should have been a different path for him or not, but I'm trying to do that differently with my other kids. So if you ultimately want them to continue on better, go like, look, my parents are in my corner. That doesn't mean we don't expect them to give their best effort. Like they should always give their best effort. That's always something they can control. They can always be in control of their attitude and what they're doing, but we can't control a lot of circumstances throughout the tournament, the games, all the things. So our job is to go, look, I love you because you're my son, my daughter. I love you. I'm proud of you for giving a great effort. Look, if you're having an effort conversation, that's probably something different, but there's probably a better time to have that conversation than immediately after the game. So you're better off just saying those two things, shutting up. And if they want to talk, you give them the space to talk. So if you're not speaking, they have an opportunity to start talking to you. And then you can actually learn like, hey, I was really nervous about this thing, or I had something go on this week that really threw me off, or I'm not feeling great, or something hurts, or whatever the case may be. If you shut up, they actually have space to speak. And that gives them an opportunity to tell you the things that are actually going on in their mind rather than us just beating them down and saying like, do this, do that better. And then they feel beat up.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely know that firsthand from when I was a kid, kind of playing hockey. And, my dad really, kind of didn't know the sport that well and kind of, sometimes it'd be a little bit overwhelming as a kid who just loved the sport. So, and not blaming him, but just all these, they don't know, parents don't always know. Like you said, you're a coach and but now you can get back at them too. And you can be like, all right, put this rock on and this hose. Let's go up the stairs. Let's go. We got to start training for this fire test.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about the similar idea, but as a coach, because we're not in the car. So we're not talking about your kids. We're talking about the kids you coach. You're not in the car. You don't have control over that. You're not at practice. You're not coaching them at the games. You're not going to the games. So, one of the things that your mission is to help build unshakable confidence. How do we do that as coaches? What is our role in this, and how can we make sure that we're consciously trying? We had Dr. Haley Perlis on a couple episodes ago talking about like this piece of it, the mental piece. But as a coach, like what are you doing to kind of give the girls the confidence that they need to kind of succeed?
For sure. Well, I think training is really, I think Brett Bartholomew said this originally, but training is just an opportunity for us to show people what they're truly capable of. I think the number one thing that I do from a mental piece, I think, is I actually work to celebrate success. Success, yeah, we all celebrate success. Celebrate failure. So in the gym, one of the things that I highly encourage our people to go like, look, I want to make sure that people are safe. Obviously, they're training well, all those things. We know what's important. We need to put them in the right scenarios and all those things. But you go like, look, if someone falls, if someone drops a weight, we got our squat rack. Say we're front squatting, and somebody goes down and they go do three reps. We're supposed to do 5, and they drop it at 4, right on the bars. And so you're like, look, I encourage my coaches and everybody else to cheer and clap for that. Because ultimately what I want them to do is to go, look, I know that I'm pushing myself to a point where I can't do any more. But I know what that is now, and I'm going to continue to work to get stronger, but I'm not afraid of failure. Because if you're not afraid of failure, you're more likely to attack rather than being passive and waiting back. And on the training floor, we're going to go, look, you're going to do a single leg hurdle hop. So we do 12 inches and we go through that. Great. And then we go, hey, let's try 18. And guess what? They missed the first one. They kick the thing over and they're like, oh, so most of them be like, oh my gosh, we live in a world that's filled with like the expectation of perfection. Like you did this one and now we go here and this one's going to be perfect. And then we're going to go here and we're going to do this and it's going to be perfect, but it's not. There should be failure. We should be pushing our athletes hard enough to go, look, I want to put you, again, in a safe environment. We're not going to do something stupid, but I'm going to challenge you to do something that's out of your comfort zone. Because if you can do that consistently, and then you start to succeed and go, you know what? I can do hard things. I can overcome this challenge, something that I didn't think was possible before, and now I can do it. So training not only is beneficial to their body, but it's now beneficial to their mind to let them know, like, all right, well, I didn't think I could do that before, but I did it. And you know what? Maybe I only did one. And maybe it wasn't the greatest form ever. Again, I don't want to do something really, really crappy, right? But you go like, it may not be perfect the first time, but they're going to come back next week and be like, hey, you know what? I did that last week. I'm going to try it again. And let's see what happens. So we take away this fear of failure because we live, again, in a world of expectation of perfection. And we can't have that expectation. But we should be expecting excellence. And so I want to push our kids and challenge our kids in a way that's going to drive them to try something that they didn't think was possible before. And if we can put that together consistently, that's going to help them to build this confidence over time. They're going to know that they're physically stronger, that they're physically faster, whatever the drill or thing that we're doing. And that's ultimately going to transfer to the field or court. And I'll tell you, I know, like for me, I can't go to a ton of games, but I try to go to at least one of every one of my athletes' games and to see it. And I know a lot of times they'll tell me, well, oh, I had a bad game or I had this. And you go like, I don't care. Like, number one, I don't care. I want to see you do your best. But then I get to take that information and go back and learn and go like, hey, do you know, I just went to a game last week, 2 weeks ago for some of our girls and they were playing and I'm looking at one of our girls and she played well, but I looked at her, I'm like, I saw her the next morning. I'm like, do you know that you are physically stronger than anybody on the court that you're playing against? Because I know it, I've seen it, but you have to believe it, right? So taking that information and turning it into something that's actionable for them so that they can actually go out and play their best, because that's what they love to do. They love to play, but I want to help them play better so they can be their best version of themselves. So I think that's really where it starts from. A mental piece is really about belief and getting rid of the fear of failure.
Yeah, that idea of you going to the game and then having a little like kind of positive conversation. There's a little bit more buy-in now because it's like Coach Keg was there, you know.
Yeah.
So I trust him. I trust him. I love him because he came to my game, and now I trust him because he's there. He saw me play. He's given me that confidence. He knows me in the gym and he knows me on the court. And it reminded me of there's a woman named Sarah Blakely who founded Spanx, right?
Thanks.
And there's a great story about her growing up where she said her dad. They had to talk about one failure that they had every week at dinner or whatever. Like, let's say it was Thursday or Friday night. I don't know. But she said, and what that was like, and they celebrated, like you talked about, celebrated that failure because it meant you tried something new. It meant that you weren't afraid to try that. And so, I mean, let's be honest. Let's look where she is now as
Doing pretty well.
originally the youngest female billionaire ever, right? That Spanx is like was a huge company. It still is huge company. And that's a huge lesson that I think, that you just reminded me too in my own training with adults. And sometimes I'll teach people a bound. I might call them skaters, but they'll get there and they're kind of shaky on it, and I'll say, don't worry about it. The language is about long term as well with me and these adults, and so I'm like, look, we're gonna get this, And then when they do, I celebrate it. And then when they kind of fall back a little, I'm like, hey, don't worry, it's the first set. This always happens on the first set, right? We got to get
Yeah.
used to it. Or it's just one of those days, man. We got it back. We're getting it back. You're killing this, you know? So it reminded me, like when you said that, I need to remember to do that with my adults a little, you know, make sure I'm doing that from a conscious perspective. So yeah, I love that idea of, because, you know, sometimes I think people think, the training, like we have to control what we can control as coaches.
Yep.
And well, exactly what you talked about. Like we're not in the car, we're not behind the bench with them. So we're in the gym and we can impact them there.
Well, we get to do a couple of things. Number one, we get to have, this is it takes a village to raise a kid, right? Like this is the opportunity for us, for them to come in and if we build rapport with them, right? We spend time, we talk to them, what's going on in their life, what's happening. They're going to be much more likely to open up. And I will tell you, this was not my original idea when I was like, hey, let's train dudes. Because that's, guys can certainly open up. But when I look at it, like they come in, they grunt, and they're like, all right, we're doing this thing. This is where girls have helped me to become a better coach, because they want to know that I'm interested in what they're doing and who they are, right? So way more, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So they're way more interested in that. So building those connections, those relationships allows us to have the opportunity to speak into them and go like, hey, when you fail, let's bring it down and go like, just reset. Let's do it again. But you're going to do that same thing. You should do that same thing on the court. So if you miss a free throw, or if you miss a kick, or you miss a goal or something like that, like you have an opportunity to reset right now rather than later on, or just hanging your head and sulking. So I think really it's about, man, if we can get people to stop worrying about being perfect, because you're never going to be anyway, and it doesn't matter. So if you can shoot for excellence, that's better. And the second thing I wanted to say is, you were talking about going to games. I will tell you, after I started training Erin, she invited me to a game, and I was like, yeah, I'll go see her play. I want to see how you're doing. I don't have anybody else to train anyway, so let's go watch her play. And she was like, hey, do you want to take a selfie with me? I'm going to post it on Instagram. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Going to games as a coach in a private facility was actually one of the ways that we grew our business drastically, because number one, the kids saw that I was involved or invested in their lives, that I wanted to see how they were playing. It ultimately turned into a selfie thing, and everybody loves it now. They're like, hey, let's take a selfie. But also parents got to see it, and they're like, look, oh, you're more interested than just bringing my kid in, taking my money and giving them something. We know you're going to give them better strength and speed and power and all the stuff. But when you're more invested in them than just that, than just, hey, come to my place, I'm coming to you, and I'm going to spend an hour or two or whatever of my time to come see your kid play, like they see that, and that's like a huge difference in how they see you as a coach and a person that's influencing their young people.
Absolutely. It's funny. I'm always going to bring it back to some of my business stuff or golf stuff. Yeah. I always tell young, trainers, they're like, oh, what certification should I get? And I'm like, look, TPI, number one. But in the meantime, if you have a golf client, go to a lesson. Mm-hmm. Because number one, they're going to appreciate that you're trying to find out about what they're doing from the golf pro. Right? That's awesome that you came to my lesson. But then the golf pro is also going to be like, wow, Coach Keg cares enough to come spend an hour here. Took him, 20 minutes to get here. He's spending 2 hours out of his day to go to a lesson. And now in the training, I would talk to my people. I'm like, hey, remember when pros said do this or that, or you're not getting enough of this? Let's work on that. Let's work on this from a physical perspective. And it just elevated the game. And then now I'm getting referrals from those golf pros as well.
For sure.
So, look, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. But at the same time, it is another great thing for the business as well. Like it's going to be amazing for your business when you kind of really show people how much you care. Let's go into your training now, just because let's get into some of the things that you like to do. Some of your big rocks, what you feel is important. I know you talk about like the feet and deceleration training and plyos, but I want you to start out for people that don't really understand what you mean by structured neuromuscular training, because you mentioned it a couple of times, certainly plenty in the book.
For sure. Well, number one, obviously, Coach Boyle's been a huge influence on me. So taking a lot of that stuff. Bobby Smith too at Ripped and Adam Fight at Ripped. Those guys were big influences on me as well. And so there's obviously tons of other ones throughout the last decade or so. But I will say, number one, I think obviously warm up matters. But one of the big pieces that we took away a couple years ago was I was looking at this. I read a book. I actually saw Dr. Emily Splickle speak at Perform Better in Chicago. And she talked about, feet. She's a podiatrist. So she had a quote, and I have to read it because I always screw it up. But the glutes are only as strong as the core is stable, and the core is only as stable as the feet are strong. So when I step back and I hear people talk about things, it's like, look, how do we help people to do something better? And what I know is we live in a culture now that we have a lot of thick-soled shoes, and proprioception is reduced because of that. And so what I will tell you is we start off in making sure that we work through the feet first. So everything we do from a warm-up perspective to begin is we're doing barefoot, because we want to make sure that we work as best as possible to create some better proprioception to help them to have better balance on their feet. And that doesn't require, Bosu balls and all that. I know Eric Cressy had written a thing about how unstable training really doesn't help. Like, it is a great place to rehab, but not in performance. So looking at that, I want our people to be stable. So we start a lot of our stuff there barefoot, and we're going to go through all of the progressions there. But I know for us, I want to make sure that our athletes are stable first. So we work through that. We do single leg hurdle hops. I think single leg hurdle hops are magical, especially for female athletes. When you look at this, a single leg hurdle hop, our body weight our bodies take about 7.3 times their body weight in absorbing that load. And when you look at that from all the way from the feet to the calves, quads, knees, everything up the chain, core, all of it has to work. So it's both the test and the training for our athletes. And when I look at one thing that I step back that I think lacks in circles outside of a lot of what we're doing is single leg hurdle hops in multiple directions. We can do linear hops, we can do medial and lateral hops. Those are things that we go, look, I can tell a lot from a person by what they do with that hop. Where are they lacking, and what do we need to continue to work on? So that's a thing that is a piece of every part of our training that we do. So when I think of structured neuromuscular training, you go like, look, we're going to do warm up. We're going to do our activations. We're going to take them through a dynamic portion. Then we're going to work on speed and power development. And then we're going to take them through strength, obviously. And then we're going to do some sort of conditioning dependent upon, for me, I look at it dependent upon where they're at in their season. If they're in season, off season, all of that. So single leg hurdle hops, really, really big deal for me to make sure we do that. Also, speed training. So when you look at this, we're looking at acceleration. We're looking at max velocity, change of direction. Obviously, you mentioned Lee Taft, like he's the king of speed, right? So looking at the stuff that he has taught in terms of helping people to get into proper positions. Because when you look at 70% of ACL injuries for female athletes, they happen during change of direction, deceleration, or poor landings. So we wanted to go, how can we step back, look at those things, and make sure that they're in the right positions? So let's start by making sure they understand those positions on a low level and then build them up. And that's really what the dynamic warm-up is built to do. So how do we take that in a structured setting, build it up, progress it, and then we start to do the speed work, and then we start to do something that's faster. So I think those are big rocks at the top of the session. And when you look at it, you go like between the warm up and between what we do from a speed and power development, that's really taking 40 minutes ish, depending on of a workout. And so then from there, we're going to go into our strength training. And I'm a huge proponent of single leg training. And I know people have talked about that on your show, and I know that's a big deal, but I will tell you, it is not a mainstream thought for someone to be like, I should do single leg training consistently as part of my thing. Maybe it's an auxiliary movement or something that I do secondarily. But we know, and I know Coach Boyle's talked about this, but Alex Natera's research, shows us what the correlations are between a back squat, body weight back squat, and a single leg squat. Being able to load that, up to 3 times. If you can take on 100% of your load, it's going to be up to 3 times a back squat. So you go, these things are not just secondary movements. There's something that's really important. And for female athletes, when we look at, all right, well, we have a wider Q angle, and we have we have instability in the joint because of laxity after puberty, things like that. Like, how can we start to make sure that we're training those things? So we spend a lot of time on single leg work. Look, we still trap bar deadlift. We still working on front squats. I am not telling you should only do single leg work, but I think it's such an important component. And I know this from athletes that I've had that have come from other facilities. And I also have learned this over the last few years from the athletes that have been with me from the beginning that went to college or playing, professionally or beyond now, and coming back and going like, this is not work that I'm doing where I am currently. And I think that's what fires me up to go like, these things really matter, and how we help someone reduce injury risk, but also to help them to maximize performance. We want them to be able to jump higher, to sprint faster, and to be able to play their game, cut, be more agile, do all of those things. That's really, really important. And if we're not hitting all of those things, we're missing components. So that's, big picture. That's how we step back and go, we're going to structure this thing in a way that we're going to hit all of those things.
Can we expand on the, you mentioned it, your favorite, the big one, single leg hurdle hops. What are some things that because you're saying we can tell a lot from that. So what are you looking for? What are, how do you progress that? How do you regress it? What are you thinking when you're looking at the single leg hurdle hop?
Right. So when we're looking at this, go just from a linear perspective, right? Can we, number one, we need to make sure that we can stick the landing, right? So we're going to go through, we're going to set up a number of hurdles in a row. If we have younger athletes, we'll actually do this one at a time, so that way we can see multiple people. But look, can we land? Number one, we know female athletes can be more quad dominant when they decelerate. So if they can't sit back, I use the phrase like, use your butt as a brake, right? Like, we're trying to sit back into your hip, try to use your glute to help stop, like to help your deceleration or help your landing. So we want to make sure, number one, we get up over the hurdle, that we're going to stick that. I guess let me back up overall. Number one, we're going to make sure that they can do bilateral jumps first. We're going to work on box stuff. So you could do that in multiple ways. So we're going to go box hops first, make sure they can stick that. Looking at those things, that allows us to tell, hey, we're ready to progress this thing to the next level, right? So can they stick the landing? Can they sit back? Can they control that for more than a second? It's easy to see when someone lands and then our athletes will like fall to the middle, right? So like, I land on one leg and then I do that. And I'm like, okay. They're like, I did it. You're like, no, you didn't do it. All right, so let's reset this thing and make sure, like, you should be able to stick and land a hop, sit back, right? So I want to make sure their knee is directly over the middle of their foot, right? It's not caving in. We don't have a valgus collapse. They're sitting back into their hip. I want them to look as if they were getting ready to take off into a sprint, right? So it's not perfect, but if we can get them into that position where they could take off and sprint from there, I know they're in a pretty good spot. If they're not, if they're too tall, if they're stiff in their leg, if their center of mass is outside of their knee, like, we're going to have a problem. That's creating issues for them. So no knee valgus. We want to make sure that they're not stiff in their landing, but we have to be stable. So this idea of creating, like, how do you get up and over, land it, stick it, but not be stiff, right? I don't want to hear your feet hit the ground. Like, that's the idea. How do we help them to absorb into the ground and sit back rather than hearing these big, loud thumps into the ground? And the same thing goes when you do medial and lateral. Obviously, it's just a different direction. You challenge them different medially than obviously laterally. So you can see people that struggle. So that's our goal, really, to start there and go, look, can you stick and control those movements before we progress you up into something that is more dynamic? The mini bounce and the continuous, doing multiple, continuing on down the turf, however many that you want to do. We have to be able to stick and be stable first before we progress on. You have to earn your progression.
How often are you regressing, like maybe saying, we need to take a step back. We're not going to take these. We're going to take these away and work on, get a couple more, 3 to 4 more weeks of strength work, of single leg strength work, to say, I'm a little nervous about the hops and we need to take it away because they're just not getting it.
Well, I would tell you, I would never take it away. But what I would do is I would regress it back to either a box hop or something. We're going to work on a snap down. We're going to work on that movement in some way, shape, or form with everybody. All right, when we start in our middle school program, we're working on bilateral landing. So making sure they understand that overall. Obviously, we're going to do that with someone that's just beginning our program, period. But then I go, look, we can get lots of box hops and feel good about that because it's going to reduce the eccentric load. So we can get that work and know it's not going to put as much strain as doing a continuous single leg hurdle hop on the turf or something like that, or even on, rubber or a hard floor. So I would never take that away. I look at that and go like, this is so important to me. I want to continue to drill this into them every single time we do it because I know ultimately it's going to have a huge transfer to sport. So, and then obviously we can see what their strength helps to add to that over time. And look, it may be a strength and stability issue. Maybe they're just not strong enough to do that. Okay, I'm going to work on that technique. Obviously, if it's awful, I'm going to take them off a single leg and go back to two legs. But I want to make sure that we're working on that in some way, shape, or form every single session.
Let's finish up the last bunch of minutes with I was telling you, man, writing one book is brutal, as you know, but you're kind of writing the same book with a different voice. One is for parents and one is for the athlete. So talk to us about the differences between the two books and what you tried to convey in each book for the parent and the athlete.
For sure. Well, I have to give a shout out to my friend Andrew Simpson, who told me the parent book is great, but there's going to be a lot of parents that are just going to be like, here, I want to give this to my kid. You read it. So here's the deal. Like, I am on both sides of this. I am a coach, but I'm also a parent. So understanding that and taking the conversations that I've had with parents, I wanted to put something together to go, look, the athlete book, I want the athlete to hear my voice. I want them to hear, look, I am a guy that believes simultaneously in you should constantly be striving to be the best version of yourself, to be great today. Every single time you do anything, whether you're on the court or field, whether you're in the training room, I think there are lots of things that they need, and I want them to hear that while simultaneously going, look, you're not perfect. You're not going to do everything right every single time. So it's this juxtaposition of like, how do you tell someone, like, keep working very hard? But it's, they also need to know, like, look, somebody cares about you. Like, I care about you enough to write something to let you know these are the important things. It's never going to be perfect. We talk a lot about mindset stuff. I think mindset is challenged. Mental toughness is a hard thing right now because there are lots of people that I won't name, but there are lots of people in the world that are like, just grind harder and be grittier and tougher and just do more. And you're like, look, you're probably running more kids into the ground than you know. And I know that there's a big value on being mentally tough. Coaches talk about it all the time. But it's not just put your head down, pretend like everything's okay, and just keep doing more. So I want people to learn the lesson. Like, how do you learn to be present and in the moment? I think one of the things that I get frustrated with a lot of our people is they're always looking ahead. Well, I got this thing over here, and I got this thing tomorrow, and I got a test over here, and I got this. And yeah, you have a lot of balls to juggle. But what are you doing right now? Because you can't do anything about your test tomorrow. You can't do anything about the tournament next weekend. But what you can do is control this moment right here, to be present in it and to give it your best effort. And when you go do that thing, you don't think about this. You're thinking about that, and you give your best effort there. So I really wanted to share that. And I also, from an athlete perspective, really just giving them the tools to go, look, if you don't have the knowledge or the understanding, I want to give you that to the best of my ability in 224 pages. Be like, here's the deal. What should you do? Don't sleep with your phone in your room. Get it out, right? Make sure that your bedroom is a place where you can get rest. Wake up in the morning and eat breakfast, detailing those things. We live in a world, I think, that's frustrating for me. We can get anything, anytime. Pick up your phone, you can get the answer to anything. So as a parent, as a coach, as an adult, we think, well, you, 15-year-old Cortland, you should know the answer to this thing. Well, she doesn't know the answer to that. She doesn't know that she should get up and eat protein and carbs and have 20 grams of this and 40 grams of that, or that her phone is hurting her sleep or whatever. You go like, no, That's our job to teach. So I wanted to take that opportunity to go like, look, there are 4 components that are super important for an athlete. You go, look, we need to make sure we're physically training. We need to recover. We need to eat for it. And we need to build the mindset for it. So those are the things that I've learned over the last 10 years. I'm like, look, I'm going to put it into a book. That way, if somebody can't come in my building, you can have this, right? So you can read that. From a parent perspective, I took a lot of the same components, obviously from a training, mindset, nutrition, all that perspective, because parents certainly need to know that. I adapted it to go like, look, I don't think I didn't detail out as much as here's this thing and you need to do that or whatever, but in some of those areas. But I did want specifically to talk about the fact that we have the opportunity to help our kids to be the best they can be. And we know that less than 2% of kids are going to play in D1, even though when they're 10 and 12, everybody wants to play D1 or whatever their sport. Go look, love your kid. And I'm not perfect at this. I have to have these conversations with myself. My wife has to have these conversations with me. But to be like, look, they're my kid. I don't care if you win or lose, if you give your best effort, even if you ultimately give a crappy effort, I may be frustrated, but I still love you. And I want you to learn these things because whether you go on and play sports in college or not, it doesn't matter. I want you to be an exceptional human to the best of your ability, to who you were created to be. And I know that from my oldest, who's now a firefighter, that I'm super proud of. And he went into firefighting because he loved team sports. He loved camaraderie. He wanted to be service oriented. That was part of his heart. But he took that and he goes, I love being around people in a team. Go like, how do we do this together? And you go, he would never have known that if he didn't have sports and didn't learn those lessons that he learned. And also learning how to deal with other people. So as a parent and a coach, I wanted to let people know what you're doing. If you're pushing your kid really hard, if you're constantly critiquing them, you are not helping them the way you think you are. And I just wanted to be very clear on that because we need to continue to have that message shared. And eventually, maybe we'll have a revolution in our club sport paradigm right now and go like, how do we change this thing to go, look, we should have games, we should travel, we should have practice, and kids should work really hard. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but ultimately they're kids. So we need to make sure that they also have a life as a kid so they're not rushed from one thing to the other. And then they're in college and they're pursuing their grades and their sport and all this. And then all of a sudden they're out and they're like, I'm an adult. So I just adult now, right? Like I didn't have a real childhood. So I think that was the whole goal behind it. Is there is a tone, there is a different tone to this. And I know that there are lots of parents that are awesome. And you go like, look, I'm really worried about my daughter tearing her ACL. How do we not do that to the best of our ability? Okay, great. Here are the tools and here are the things that if you're not in Rockford or you maybe you don't have access or whatever, and you're looking for training, you're like, these are the components that you should be looking for in someone that's doing the training for your athlete. So ultimately, a lot of the things that are in these books are things that people on your podcast have talked about. But I wanted to make sure that we're not just talking in our own circles, but we can take information and share them out with people that have no idea what a single leg hurdle hop is, or that 70% of ACL injuries happen with non-contact, or that single leg, whatever, all that stuff, that they don't know that. And be honest, they don't really care. They go, I just want my kid to play better. I want them to have the best ability and their opportunity to be who they were or who they are. So I just wanted to put that together in those two things. And so I ended up writing 2 books, which is quite a challenge, but it's something I'm really, really proud of, to go like, look, we've put together 2 books, and these are things I think will stand a long time. Techniques may change, some things may change, but the fundamentals of what we're doing won't ever change. And so that's why I put them in a place to hopefully have forever.
Love it. You should be proud, because becoming the Unshakable Athlete, done a great job with it. Obviously, I know there's a lot of work that you put in for having two different versions. But it also reminded me, one thing I saw at the Olympics was they did a special on Norway and their childhood development program. And they don't allow any of this stuff before 12 years old. They have a lot of free programs, like they were showing a couple times a year, the ski jump. They allow them to come there for free. The equipment's for free, and they do this. There's like a very famous cross country skiing track, world famous, that they allow them to go on and they have a blast on it. And the whole thing is about having fun. And so everybody's wondering, like, how can this small country of 5 million people break records and win all these, medals and everything, because the way they've developed them at such an early age. Don't get me wrong, they get serious at 13. They're
Yep.
picking their people and they're picking the best and they're going to develop them. But still, like they're allowing these kids to have a childhood. So it just reminded me of that. And I think it's just such a great message, and love what you've done with becoming the Unshakable Athlete and for young women. And, we're going to see, it's more important. We're going to see a lot of young girls right now about to go out and buy skates. And they, after winning, we just won the gold medal, and we're going to see a lot of American girls get into that too, and just play other sports because they want to do that. And so you've done a great job with the book at Movement Fitness. Congrats on 10 years. It's no small accomplishment. So Coach Keg, thanks for coming on and talking about all of this.
And I really appreciate you having me on. It's an honor. I love this podcast. I love the message you continue to share with all the coaches. And so thank you so much for having me and letting me be on here.